Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox back with Carsten Tams for part one of our five-part series. Carsten, it's good to be back with you.
Great to be back with you, Tom.
Carsten, today we're going to start an exploration of one of the topics that I think still bedevils many compliance professionals, and that's ethics and compliance training. You and I both grew up at a time where training was written by lawyers for lawyers. Then we had a sort of a difference, once again, drawing on your background, of a difference in the European approach, which seemed to focus more on values, as opposed to an American approach, which focused, of course, on rules and regulations. And now we've hopefully evolved past sort of all of those, but we still, I think, if we don't have a problem, we have training that doesn't engage. Maybe that's a fair way to put it. And I've heard some characterize it as tired of ENC training, lack of engagement. It's something they have to do. But there's ways to fix that we're going to explore throughout this series. But in this episode, I really wanted to set up the problem. Why do you think employees are tired of ethics and compliance training, Karsten?
Yeah, no, I think it's kind of the billion-dollar elephant in the room for ethics and compliance as a practice. I think training is one of the most important things that ethics and compliance departments do. It's also incredibly important in terms of the size of the budget that they spend on it. The compliance training industry is huge. It's one of the biggest, if not the biggest, corporate learning sector. And yet here we are, and we have very little after billions of dollars spent and millions of people going through compliance training. There's very little evidence that it is working in terms of truly creating a better speak up culture and truly affecting employee behaviors in any positive sense. What it does undoubtedly accomplish is that we're able to check that box and say, yes, we fulfilled our requirement to train people. But yeah, in terms of behavioral impact, I think it is lacking, and there are some interesting data points on that. So there was a study by Gallup some time ago, and it showed that, I think it was in 2023, and it showed that 3/4 of compliance training showed little to no. And there was a very interesting second finding, which was that training only tended to have benefit when it was experienced very positively by the learner. When the learner rated the training experience as excellent, then the training actually had a possible impact on behaviors. And I think that's an interesting finding because it shows the training experience matters. Okay. So we really have to kind of understand better what makes people engage in this type of training. And interestingly, also, this is definitely not a secret among ENC practitioners. NAVEX did another fascinating survey, and they ask why are training programs often failing? It's a very provocative question. Not many organizations even ask that question. Big kudos to NAVEX for going there. And what compliance practitioners answered is that there is a huge problem with learner fatigue. And when asked further for why are people tired of compliance training, the answer most frequently given was training is uninspiring, unmemorable, and often perceived as irrelevant to the work of learners. So yeah, so clearly there is a problem. Now, I'll just say one more thing, and that is I see 4 engagement killers. Killers is a strong word, but let's say 4 things that really make it hard for people to engage. And that the first thing, and maybe the most important thing, is compliance training tends to be deficit focused or delinquency focused. The trainee, the learner is kind of cast in the role of a person who's about to commit compliance mistake, misconduct of some sort. The second one is training is very often very passive. It's not experiential. Third, it's an isolated affair. People do it in their cubicles or offices or homes with little social interaction. And it is not playful. It's didactically very rigid. And those are kind of the 4 themes that I hope we can explore together in this series.
Carson, as with all things, when I talk to you, we have to say 2 things. we're going to bookend it or something you said in the middle of your remarks, which is it's all about the UX. It's
Hmm.
all about the user experience. And that's it. It's a failure in user experience. But you said something very early in your remarks that I really want to pick up on and explore. And you said, I think, as I wrote it down, that companies are still treating this as a check the box exercise. And my concern, or I think you're correct. And my concern, Karsten, is that if you view this as a check the box exercise, everyone will understand it as unimportant. Whether the user experience is good or not, they say we have to do it. They say we have to do it. I'm going to do it. I heard a woman who did training for the US Army talk about if the training was bad, the enlisted men would say, this can't be important. The training's bad. How important could it be? So how do we get companies to move off the check the box mentality so that they can move to enhancing the user experience through some of the strategies that we hope to explore throughout this podcast series?
Mhm. Yep. No, excellent point. And I think, first of all, I think the Army does some really interesting training, actually. There's a lot to be learned on what's happening there, in particular in the area of anti-sexual harassment or harassment training, more broadly speaking. So I think compliance departments face a big challenge. They have to serve big numbers, right? They have to do training on an ongoing basis for thousands, tens of thousands of employees. So the default mechanism here has become online training, and it has some great benefits in terms of being able to document learner participation, and it's relatively cheap. So can you scale more meaningful training? And that seems to be difficult. However, companies have, as I said, I think a lot of practitioners have an awareness that there is a problem, and that some of them have tried things out to make things more engaging. We see people advocating for more humor, for animation, for high production value videos. I have seen compliance training featuring wizards, crystal ball, and zombies. And while I respect the love and the money that people put into creating this type of training, I do think that these are cosmetic gimmicks and they fail to address the underlying problem. Entertainment is great, but it's not the same as learning. And yeah, I think we need to understand there is a place for online training, and that is informational in nature. This is technical. This teaches you, let's say, the ins and out of anti-corruption or anti-money laundering, or what other technical issue you want to address with your learner. But there has to be a place somewhere for training that engages people on an aspirational level, on a psychological level, and achieves some kind of behavioral impact. And that's not going to be online training. This is going to be some form of hybrid training. It is going to be social training. It is an experience that is more playful, has to do with hands-on doing, and that's enabling in nature.
Carson, I'd like to take our remaining time in this episode to maybe give our listeners a preview of what we hope to bring to them, some ideas to them that they can move to a more effective training and start with the four proven principles of learning design. Could you go through those and maybe give us a teaser or a hint of what we hope to share in later episodes?
Yeah, great. So in the next episode, I think we'll talk about strength-based training. And that is probably the most important pivot you can make in creating more effective training, whatever medium you use, whether it's in person or online. Often compliance training starts with kind of the problem that we have to help people not create the next compliance scandal, not trip up. And we're casting the learner in the role of a potential delinquent. And this creates a lot of problems. People don't engage. It does not provide with a positive user experience. And to the contrary, people have a lot of capabilities. They can be very effective partners in producing ethical outcomes, producing a more ethical culture in organizations. And that's what we will explore in the first episode. once you make that pivot, your training will improve by bounds and leaps. The next episode will focus on experiential learning. This, again, is a very influential concept in the science of education and learning theory, that effective learning is experiential. It goes beyond sitting at a screen and clicking on multiple choice answers. It really challenges people to bring their creative and problem-solving capabilities to the learning situations, to think creatively, and to address meaningful problems. So this is about experiential learning in the second topic we will address. Then the third one, in the third episode, I would love to talk with you about social learning. And again, the idea that collaborative learning has unique learning benefits is well established in educational science. And so that's what we will pursue. And it's relevant in particular for ethics training, because ethics training, or ethics, I should say, succeeds or fails always between people. It is the quintessential social challenge. And so who you know, what your relations are with others, whether you're good at communicating, etc., all of this has huge bearings on whether people behave ethically, whether they do something, speak up, etc. So that's what we'll explore. And then the last and fourth topic is playful learning. Make your ethics learning more playful. Don't make it didactically too linear, too rich, because when we engage in play, when our mind goes into that place of play, we immerse ourselves, we are much more deeply engaged, we become more open to new information. And research has shown that playful learning really helps with a lot of important learning outcomes, retaining information, also transferring learned information or skills to different scenarios. Yeah, playful learning, making ethics learning more playful will be the fourth and last topic in this series.
Carsten, I think one of the themes, that's not correct. One of the topics that will overlay all of these podcasts is the issue of effectiveness. And I bring that up because the Department of Justice has said training should be effective. Will we be able to explore how the compliance professional can take these 4 proven principles of learning design and then use them to lead to monitoring or determining effectiveness so that they can correct or on an ongoing basis continually improve their training?
Yeah, I love to hear that the regulatory and oversight authorities are paying more attention to effectiveness. And I think what we need to do in ethics and compliance training is we talk a lot about evidence-based practice, but if you look at training in particular, you don't very often see proven concepts from learning and educational science being applied. So my hope is that, yes, this trend will help us see more of the valuable insights that have been produced over decades now and have them applied better in ethics and compliance training.
Carsten, unfortunately, we are near the end of our time for this episode. I hope our listeners will join us for our next episode where we look at game changer, focus on strengths. Carsten, I look forward to continuing this dialogue.
Me too, Tom. Thank you.